In this section, we are going to be talking about Gulp. So this is actually one of the most important things that I wanted to discuss in this series, and it's applicable, again, I keep on saying this, is applicable to everyone, whether you use Ruby, PHP, ASP.NET. In fact, ASP.NET 5, the default templates come with Gulp. Visual Studio 2015 has built-in tooling support for both Gulp and Grunt. So hopefully, I mean, that demonstrates that these tools are really not just appropriate for Node.js developers, but pretty much any web developer that wants to do certain pre-processing on their assets, like using Babel, or using Less, or using Sass. So basically what Gulp is it's a task runner. A task runner is nothing more than a relatively simple program that's responsible for running tasks that you define. We've kind of already seen an example of a task runner, quote unquote, in our package.json file under the scripts property, where we define little snippets of repetitive shell scripting that in Windows' case, basically a bat file, where we put the logic that we don't want to have to repeat every time we want to perform a task. Well, Gulp is basically the same concept, but an actual build tool, an actual task runner, goes out and it gives you a bunch of more features, dependency management, makes building tasks really, really easy. And the great thing about Gulp is it's very simple. There's going to be a couple things that, if you're completely new to it, might look like magic and you might not know what's going on. In this section, we will be diving into things like streams and Vinyl FS, and even how to make your own plugin if you're into that. But yeah, it's really simple. There's only a handful of bits that you need to understand to start using Gulp. And one of the biggest advantages here is that Gulp has pretty much taken over the JavaScript ecosystem as far as build tools over the last couple of years. If you look at Gulp's commit activity and downloads compared to the alternatives, you'll see that it's pretty much taken over. And I guess, yeah, this is basically the de facto task runner in the JavaScript ecosystem. As a result, there are many, 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 many plugins that allow you to really, really simplify your build process. And Gulp also enforces a Unix philosophy, just like Node and NPM itself, where you get these plugins and they're super specialized and super small, and then you can combine them because like I said before, the API of Gulp is very, very straightforward. So you can take all these plugins, combine them into really, really powerful workflows, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. So just to be clear, the kinds of things you're going to be doing with Gulp is you're going to be creating watch tasks during development that make sure your JavaScript, your ES 2015 JavaScript gets compiled, or your Less gets compiled. You're going to create other tasks, like right before you push up to production, you might want to create a task that takes all of your JavaScript and concatenates it and minifies it to both obfuscate your code and to improve performance as far as file size and loading time. So in this video, I really want to show you guys just how simple Gulp is. We're going to use a couple plugins. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put together a basic development workflow using Gulp that'll compile our ES 2015 code and our Less code. Now, there is an unfortunate thing that I have to talk about now that might not be a problem for you future people, but is a problem for me and potentially people who are not so far into the future. And that is the existence of Gulp 3 and Gulp 4. Now, Gulp 3 has been around, very mature and all that fun stuff. Gulp 4 is not released yet, but it is production. Even the creator himself, says it is production ready. There's just a couple issues, I think, on the GitHub that need to be addressed before an official release. So we will talk about how we can install Gulp 4, and we will be using Gulp 4. I will put in a video later in this section to show you guys the difference between Gulp 3 and Gulp 4, but it's not that big because they change the way that you define tasks to an extent and define dependencies, but they don't really change how the core of Gulp works. So all your plugins in Gulp 3 will still work in Gulp 4 and all that fun stuff, and all the topics we cover in this section will still apply. But it does mean we're going to have to do a couple funky things in order to install Gulp 4 on our system. So you guys might not have to do that. And to know whether or not you have to do that, hop over to npmjs.com, go to packages Gulp, or if you just go to npm and just type in Gulp, You'll see Gulp right there. And if you look over here to the version, if it's still 3.9 or 3.10 or whatever, if it's still a major version 3, then you're going to have to install it in the way I'm going to show you. If it's on 4, you won't, and I'll talk about the commands you'll need in a second here. So I guess let's go ahead and get started. There is a very interesting way that Gulp works, and it's also what makes it interesting is so. Like I said, Gulp is a task runner. We want it available across our entire system to be able to run. We just want to be able to type in Gulp and hit enter, right? To run whatever local Gulp configuration that we have located in this directory. But as I've said multiple times, installing packages that have binaries or installing packages at all globally is a very, 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 very bad idea. So Gulp has this really interesting hybrid approach. It allows us to install the command line interface globally, and then we also install it locally. And when we install the command line interface globally, we can type in Gulp no matter where we are in our terminal or in our command line. But then what it'll do is it'll search that directory that we're currently in for a local installation of Gulp and then execute that instead. And also, the cool thing about, again, if you're worried about Gulp 3 versus Gulp 4, if you install the Gulp 4 CLI tool, it will work with local installations of Gulp 3. The opposite might not be true. If you have used Gulp before and you have it installed globally, you're going to have to go ahead and uninstall it in the case that if you are using version 3 or below. So you'll have to go ahead and say npm uninstall gulp-g and make sure that you have the version 4 CLI installed globally, and even if you still want to run local installations of version 3. So yeah, let's go ahead and npm init real fast. Blah, 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 just create our package.json. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, now don't hit enter yet. If this number on npmjs.org is 4, if the major version is 4, this is all you're going to have to do. npm install Gulp. But if you're not that far into the future, we are going to have to install it directly from the GitHub repository. Now, fortunately, there's a way within npm to install stuff directly from GitHub. We can specify an actual GitHub location, an actual GitHub repository, and even what branch that we want to install it off of. So for example, here is the Gulp JS / Gulp repository. So this is the actual Gulp installation. And if we go over here to branch, we'll notice there's a 4.0 branch, and that's version 4. So we want to get this package installed locally in our project. So how do we do that? Well, you could specify the entire Git URL, but npm has this nice little shorthand if you're installing off of GitHub. I can go ahead and just type in, so this is pretty cool, Gulp JS / Gulp. Remember, that is the name of this repository, Gulp JS / Gulp. And then I can specify a branch. So I'm going to say hash 4.0. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. So again, you don't have to do that if you already have, if Gulp is already on version 4 on npm. But this is a cool little trick. I mean, I guess just showing you guys that you can just grab things right off GitHub if you want to. That is, if it's a node package, you can just download it directly from GitHub. And I personally think that's really cool anyway. But you're going to have to do this in a lot of cases where you're wanting to install a pre-release of something that hasn't made its way to npm.js yet. But I'll go ahead and pause so you guys don't have to watch this. And we're back. So notice how it went ahead and it grabbed github.com gulp.js gulp.git. Now, interestingly, you for that to work, you might have to have a Git client installed on your system. I hope most of you guys do anyway. If you don't, head on over and install an installation of Git. But stuff and things. We still have a problem, though. I can't just do gulp. I still can't do that. Remember, I can do node modules.bin gulp if I wanted to, and it will run gulp. It'll say no gulp file found, obviously, because we haven't specified our tasks yet. But I can't just run gulp anywhere. So how do I do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the CLI. So the Gulp JS package includes the command line interface with it, or the Gulp JS / Gulp includes the command line interface with it, but you can also install the command line interface as a lightweight module, and that's the module that we are going to install globally on our system so that I can just type in gulp wherever I am. So to do that, we can go ahead and just type in npm install -g. The -g can be at the beginning or end of this. It doesn't matter. Gulp JS / Gulp -CLI at 4.0. And I'll go ahead and hit enter. So this will install the CLI tools globally. Now again, fortunately, this will allow us to execute both Gulp 4 and Gulp 3 instances. Remember, this global installation is going to defer to our local installation when we run this code, or run this command. Again, if this is at version 4, you would simply have had to have done npm install -g gulp -CLI. You could do that if the version 4 is out. But now I can just run Gulp. And running Gulp will go out, it'll find my local installation of Gulp and execute that. So yeah, let's go ahead and actually see how straightforward working with Gulp is. In the interest of time, I will go ahead and do that in the next video. So make sure that you have Gulp installed, and then we will see you then. So I'll be right back, I guess.